My name is Nasir Baba. I am with the Department of Curriculum Studies and Educational Technology, Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. I am here to replace Dr. Mikailu, who has been with you and who was with you in the first town hall meeting we had. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. My connection with this activity is because of my research interest in Almajiri integration. And I believe that is why Mikhail felt I would have something to gain from this interaction and I may be able to add value. Now, the assignment I have before me now is to present a recap, so to say, of some of the major issues or the major takeaways from the first engagement we had, the first town hall meeting, which was very rich. Because I wasn't at the session, I had to go through about 2 hours of video to pick out what I believe to be the major issues that are worth recasting so that people can have them at the back of their minds, even as we go into the panel discussion. Now, like that session was rich because it had a diverse representation because we had a presentation from Dr. David, who was the convener of the session. We had Professor Ihobere, who is the chair of the Basic Education Committee. He delivered a keynote address. Dr. Anna Maziga, the Deputy Chief of Party of AENN, an education program implemented in Borno and Yobe State. And then we had from also Kimberly Gare, who made a presentation on financing of alternate school. So, I mean, it's a lot of things, a lot of content. If you also add to that the panel discussions that we had. But what I did was to compress all of this into one slide. So you can imagine how it was that I had to drop a lot of information, but I tried to do justice to each of the issues raised so that at least people will have them at the back of their minds and we would also take them into account as we move forward. Now, for simplicity, what I attempted to do was to organize these takeaways into like 6 thematic areas. First, we have public policy and institutions. So what I did here was to organize everything, well, not everything, but the major things that were said around policy and public institutions. And then we had a second subheading thematic area, which was on focus on the formal school system, how it was rather not adequate to the needs of the out-of-school children. And then we have the interventions that are ongoing, which Professor Hiovere mentioned. I think I counted about 16 that he mentioned that time, which were ongoing. And then we also see how do we now build up or scale a model. That is the 4th thematic area we're going to look at. And then in her presentation, Kimberly emphasized some of the key minimum essentials that any model of accelerated, any model of alternate education should have. We'll look at those. And then the last thematic area is how to fund, how to test, and then how to sustain the model. Now, I will quickly go over the first one, which is public policy. Now, in his presentation, Dr. David critically looked at the UBE Act and identified some of the flawed assumptions there. And these assumptions center around the belief that maybe every child who goes to school has the capacity and therefore can run through the normal school curriculum. The beliefs around who has control over children, is it their parents or government? But the bottom line is that this policy appeared to be skewed towards children who are in the mainstream, meaning children who ordinarily will go to school and be in school. Now, if you focus on those children, then you are isolating or excluding a large number of beneficiaries, just like we have seen. Now, Professor Ihovere mentioned lack of implementation. In fact, lack of political will and sustained funding. And he said this funding is not just allocation, but release of funding. I believe that is one policy issue which is worth looking into. And then for me, the biggest one, and I think Professor Ihonvbere mentioned it in passing when he made his presentation, is lack of coordination. One, between the formal and the non-formal education system, and then secondly, between institutions of government that are responsible for managing education. I'm talking here at the federal level, like UBEC, like IMMEC, like NERDC, Nomadic Education Commission, all those institutions that have responsibility for policy coordination. Now, you don't see much of coordination, but which makes it difficult actually to address needs of the non-formal school system. Now, there is also lack of active participation by the state and local governments. Very true, because the states and local governments appear to rely almost exclusively on federal instruments, meaning once there is a federal policy, instead of them to domesticate it and then adapt it and make it suitable to their situation, they don't. They miss that a lot. And I believe that is one issue. I think Professor Ihonvbere again identified this as a major problem. Now, these are some of the key policy issues, just so that we can bear them in mind as we go into our discussion. Then there is the formal school system itself, not being inclusive enough, again, which is a fallout of the policy inadequacies that Dr. David identified when he presented. It's like the formal school system is only for the average child who would fit in normally. And then for that child who is in difficult situation or who is deprived, the school system doesn't really do much. But then there is also the problem of the school system, the public school system not being attractive in terms of poor learning environment, also poor learning outcomes. I think Professor Ihonvbere dwelled on this, how the school is not really making it attractive for children to come and learn. And then there is the high indirect and opportunity cost of schooling for some parents. Now, this was not actually emphasized in any of the presentations, but I felt that this is one key issue. Now, because again, there are parents for whom the attendance of their children in school is a huge sacrifice, because it then means that those children have to forego some economic activities in order to be in school. Now, this is opportunity cost of schooling. Now, it is something we really need to look at, and that is the beauty of alternate schooling, because it provides that flexible arrangement where children can use their time productively for economic activities and then also come to school to learn. And then with the school system, still there is skewed access. In most cases, you find that 3 categories of people are disadvantaged. 1, are you poor? 2, do you live in a rural area? 3, are you a girl? Now, in most cases, if these 3 factors disadvantage people from having access to quality basic education. In fact, one scholar called them the correlates of educational advantage. I mean, the correlates of the educational disadvantage: rural location, poverty, and gender. Then there is this marketplace of interventions. And in fact, that is one of the issues that Prof raised, which really touched me again, because we're also engaged in a research right now where we're looking at the integrated curriculum provisions as it is implemented in the Northwest. Now you find this array of interventions targeting out-of-school children. As I was listening to the video, I was writing them down. I think I counted about 16 that Prof mentioned, and I'm sure that's not all. Now, the problem is that if you look at most of these interventions, they are donor-driven. They are donor-driven interventions, which is a good thing because they are like adding value. But then they can also be problematic because unless you control donor-driven interventions, they may distort your own policy. And I think to some extent that is again what we are seeing in the educational sector. And then there is uncoordinated implementation, particularly at the state level, because you find like different actors, with different programs, with different curriculum. But then you find that the states don't make deliberate effort in order to control these programs and then make them part of their educational policy and programs. Then there is unsustainability after phase out. Again, because this program, intervention programs normally have lifespan. So after their last one, you would expect that people would continue, but then there is that distance. And so because of that, the impact they leave is short-lived and temporary. You know, they have huge impact on enrollment, on learning quality, on employment opportunities, but after the program winds up, then it becomes problematic to sustain it. Now, the fourth thematic area, now because if you look at 1, 2, 3, like they are like problem areas. That is, what are the major challenges that are afflicting the existing arrangement? Now, the next 3 are the opportunities we have. What opportunities can we now get or can we derive from these challenges to build a model which we can now use or leverage upon in order to get these children some kind of opportunities for learning? And so the fourth one is build or scale up a model. I think Kimberly made a very important point that if you want to get this problem solved, then have a model. So that a model that has good ideas that can be supported and funded and then implemented to help these children to get some kind of sound education. But then we are lucky because all those interventions that are existing, which Prof mentioned, you know, there are interventions, many of which have made an impact. So what we need to do is identify them rather than going back and starting from the scratch, identify them and see what do they bring to the table. Now, again, it's important because we are looking forward to having diversified provisions, meaning that because it's an alternate education, it means one package cannot solve everybody's problem. So at the end of the day, you will have to have differentiated provisions that are targeted to the specific needs of each beneficiary group. So that is where you can now pick from those that are available. And then Dr. Anna, in her presentation, I think emphasized so much on the accelerated model. Again, accelerated model is probably the model best suited to out-of-school children, because I think, like one of the speakers mentioned, I think it was Dr. Anna, that the formal school system cannot actually take care of the unique circumstances of the out-of-school children. So the accelerated education model is worth looking into as we build our model. And then we have to build local capacity and then participation, encourage participation of local institutions at the state and local government, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are implementing this program. So we want to see them take control of these programs. Then the fifth one is focus. I think the fifth and the sixth one is focused mainly on the presentation that Kimberly made, because I believe that was more or less a practical recommendation, a practical advice as to what we're supposed to do. Now, she identified 4 minimum essentials that she felt any model that is targeting out-of-school children should incorporate. Otherwise, we may not record much success. And those 4 are healthcare, economic empowerment, social integration, and then community partnership. Thank God, when we had the presentation from LBI, you found that some of those key elements are included. In their own case, they have 8 elements, so it means there are more than we have here. But I think from the presentation she made is these are key. Again, when we come to discuss, we look at, is there anything that is missing that among the key elements that she has identified? And then the last one is, okay, now that you have a model, you have to test that model. But for you to test that model, you need funding. Now, what Kimberly mentioned in her presentation, which stood out, was that ordinarily we would think that funding is a major constraint. Now, Kimberly felt that funding is the easiest part. What you need to do is build a model that can sell, and then you find philanthropies and financiers who are willing to provide the funding for you to test the model. I think she gave different models like impact-based, outcome-based, and impact bonds model, which she felt will be used to sustain this. I know that as we build these models, we need to, I believe, hold on to people like Kimberly so that we can get that advice as to how to get this funding, because it's very important. But the thing I think she meant, one thing I took away from what she mentioned was that most of these philanthropies will fund the testing of the model. Now, it means, therefore, that once the model is tested, then it becomes the responsibility of government to now fund and sustain and scale up that model. I think very similar to the problem we have identified with regard to the interventions that are ongoing now. Any intervention that is development oriented, that is driven by donors, is an intervention done so that people or the indigenous government can now see what value is there in this intervention so that they can now scale it up. I think that is the opportunity we have. Now, in a nutshell, I'm sure I must have missed a lot of things, but I believe, to my thinking, these are some, if we hold on to this, these are some of the critical building blocks that we need to dwell upon. So I think when we come to the panel discussion, the questions I'm going to address are going to be looking at this, and so that we examine what is missing and what we need to add in that. Then the last thing I would say here is just to remind us what are we supposed to be focusing on here, because the first town hall meeting, like the moderator at that time, Mikhail, mentioned, was aimed at looking at or conceptualizing the alternate education system. And I believe we have said enough, or we have gotten some of the major building blocks of that concept. Now we move a little from talking to doing, meaning that, okay, now that we know what this means, what are the critical models? What are those models that we think have worked in the past? Again, because we have people that are experienced, have diverse experience here. What are best practices that we can build into those models? And then what are the basic components of the alternate education model? Kimberly gave us minimum of 4. LBI gave us 8. Now let us look at this 4 against this 8, and in fact against any number that we know, and see how can we leverage on this in order to get where we want to go to. And I believe this is what we are going to focus on in the panel discussion. I think I will pause here. I don't know if we are going to take anything, or we just move on to the panel discussion. Ifoma, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baba. I think we move on to the panel discussion now, so we don't lose the momentum.
Okay, great. Today's panelists, I believe I'm trying to go through the list. Great. We have, let me quickly introduce them. We have Dr. Umar Buba Bender. I don't know whether doctor is here. Do we have Dr. Bender here?
Yes, he was online.
Oh, okay. Well, Dr. Bender is one of our panelists. When I come to ask questions, I'll give a brief highlight about Dr. Bender. We also have Honorable Dr. Shehu Balarabe Kakale, who have seen. I know he's here. He's among the panelists. Then we have Professor Muhammad Tukur Muazu, Professor of Curriculum Studies. I don't know whether he's here, but he's on the panel. And then we have Professor Chidi Ansem Odinkalu. I don't know whether he's here too, but we have him on the panel. I think Uju is also on the panel. Uju is sitting for Mrs. Adegoke. Can we speak? Yes. Yes. Is that Honorable Kakale that was asking to speak?
Yes, it was Honorable Kakale.
Okay, great. Honorable, I was actually coming to you because I know that you have been sitting here patiently, and we've been with us since morning. So my first question will go to you, but before I do that, let me introduce you once again. Honorable Shehu Balarabe Kakale is a member representing Bodinga, Dengeshuni, Toyota Federal Constituency, and a former Commissioner of Health in Sokoto State from 2015 to 2019. Now, I also know Honorable Kakale virtually because I don't think we have met, but I know he has made efforts in the National Assembly. That time I sponsored a bill Almajiri, and because that is an area that I'm interested in, I followed him. And I think early this year or late last year, he organized, I think, a workshop in